Commander Terran had supervised fracture trials for 17 Academy cycles, and until that morning, he believed alloy behaved more predictably than recruits. Metal always announced failure before breaking. Species usually did too. Pressure revealed limits, hesitation revealed fear, and arrogance usually cracked first. That certainty lasted until a Talrex cadet laughed at the human's hands and asked how something so small expected to survive military materials testing. The human looked at the alloy rod once, asked whether bending counted more than breaking, and suddenly every sensor in the room registered a number the Academy had never recorded before. They noticed her hands before they noticed anything else. That, later, would become deeply embarrassing for everyone involved. In the metallurgy wing of Orbital Academy 7, where military engineering recruits learned which materials held under pressure and which failed under fire, species from 12 systems had gathered around the alloy demonstration tables, expecting another ordinary first-day evaluation. The assignment was simple: identify structural weaknesses, apply calibrated force, and record fracture behavior under controlled stress. Most recruits treated it as a technical exercise. Some treated it as a competition. 3 cadet cadets immediately turned it into a social ritual of public superiority. And that was how the human became interesting. Cadet Mira Halden stood at the far side of Table 4, silent, waiting for the instructor to finish distributing gloves. She wore the same academy gray as everyone else, sleeves rolled once at the wrists, dark hair tied back, expression neutral in the way humans often looked when deciding whether something deserved attention. She did not look physically remarkable. Medium height, lean build, no visible implants, no reinforced skeletal markings, no exo-assist braces, and, as Cadet Vorek loudly observed, very small hands. Those cannot possibly pass compression certification, he announced to no one who had asked. Several recruits nearby looked over. Vorek belonged to a heavy gravity species from Talrex Prime, broad through the shoulders, 4 thick fingers on each hand, wrists built like industrial hinges. His species treated grip strength the way some cultures treated poetry, publicly and often. He lifted one of his own hands beside hers for comparison. The difference was obvious. His palm nearly covered both of hers. A few recruits laughed, not cruelly yet, just academically amused. Mira looked at him once, then at his hand, then back at the alloy rods laid across the table. Instructor Terran, who had been calibrating stress sensors near the central console, turned only when he heard the laughter. What exactly is entertaining enough to interrupt my lesson? Vorek straightened slightly. The human appears under-equipped for material force application. That caused a few more restrained sounds of amusement. Terran did not smile. He approached slowly, gaze shifting from Vorek to Mira, then to the rods laid in ordered sequence across the testing table. Each rod represented a different alloy density, training sequence metals, flexible first, then hardened variants, then military-grade samples used only for calibration reference. Normally, recruits never touched the final category on day 1. Terran folded both arms behind his back. Cadet Holden. Yes, instructor. Does your species require external grip support for compression work? No, instructor. Can you perform the assignment? Yes, instructor. Vorek looked openly unconvinced. Terran noticed. That made his tone colder. Excellent. Then we will let measurable reality speak instead of commentary. The room shifted, because Academy instructors rarely ignored mockery without turning it into demonstration. And demonstration usually meant someone regretted speaking first. Terran tapped the first alloy rod. Baseline compression, manual bend, no leverage. Vorek moved immediately. He gripped the rod in both hands, planted his stance, and bent it gradually through visible effort until the metal curved within acceptable training range. Respectable result. Strong enough for first cycle approval. He released it with obvious satisfaction. 2 nearby cadets nodded approval. Terran marked the reading, then looked at Mira. Your turn. She stepped forward without hurry. No dramatic preparation, no flexing, no visible attempt to answer the room. She simply picked up the same alloy rod. held it once, tested its balance, then bent it, not gradually, not with strain. The metal folded in one clean motion, smooth, controlled, almost casual, a perfect curve. The room went silent so quickly that even the stress sensor click became audible. Vorek frowned, not shocked yet, just irritated. "That alloy proves nothing," he said quietly. Mira placed the bent rod down carefully, aligning it beside Vorek's result, as if symmetry mattered more than reaction. Terran checked both readings without comment. The difference was immediate. Same alloy, same length, same task. But where Vorek's bend showed uneven pressure and slight distortion near the center, Mira's curve held near calibration symmetry. The monitor confirmed it. Force distribution cleaner, material stress lower, result objectively better. "That alloy proves nothing," Vorek repeated, louder now, as though volume might help physics reconsider. Terran did not look up. "It proved enough to produce data. Flexible training alloy bends for anyone with hands. Then your result should have matched hers." That earned a few restrained sounds from nearby recruits, dangerous little laughs from species already sensing the room shift. Vorek's jaw tightened. "Again," he said, stepping closer. "Same bar, same grip, no angle changes." He needed the second attempt more than anyone else in the room. Terran handed him another rod, same density, same dimensions. Vorek planted harder this time, more force, more visible tension through shoulders and wrists. The rod bent again, but the same flaw returned, center pressure arriving too early, slight flattening where force lost elegance. Acceptable, but no better. Terran logged it, then handed Mira the third rod without speaking. She turned it once between her fingers, tested weight, shifted one thumb slightly lower, then bent it again. Same clean arc, same effortless control, same unbearable silence after the sensor tone confirmed superior symmetry. Now even recruits from neighboring tables had stopped pretending not to watch. The crystalline cadet near table 2 lowered his own tool set entirely. The aquatic recruit leaned forward enough that his bench slid half a unit. Vorek stared openly now. "You practiced this?" "A little," Mira said. "How much is a little?" She considered. "My father repaired freight braces manually when clamps jammed." The aquatic cadet blinked. "Freight braces? Old cargo rigs. By hand? When tools failed." That answer spread discomfort faster than Mockery ever had. Terran tapped the next rod. Higher density, second-tier hardened alloy. Normally where first cycle recruits started failing visibly. "Third density," he said. Vorek moved first again. This time strain appeared early. Wrists locked too soon. Shoulders rose. The alloy resisted longer before finally yielding halfway into an acceptable curve. He released with a sharper breath than before. No satisfaction now, only irritation. Terran marked the result. Then Mira took hers. She did not rush. One glance, one grip correction. Then a controlled bend, so clean the sensor emitted a sharper approval tone rarely heard outside instructor trials. The room changed again, because that tone had hierarchy built into it. Several cadets exchanged glances immediately. Vorek looked at the monitor like betrayal had become visible. "That sensor is wrong." Terran finally looked up. "The sensor is older than you, and considerably less emotional." A few recruits laughed, quietly, carefully, because by now nobody wanted attention landing on them next. Mira placed the rod down. Vorek pointed at her hands. "That should not happen with that size." Mira looked at her own hands briefly, as if checking whether they had changed since morning, then answered, "They usually work." That line caused a short burst of laughter, because its calmness somehow made everything worse for anyone resisting the obvious. Terran opened the lower drawer beneath table 4. Inside rested the first military-grade rod, dark matte finish, heavier, denser. No recruit touched those during ordinary first sessions. The laughter died instantly. Vorek noticed the color and frowned. "Instructor," Terran lifted the rod and placed it between them. "New test. That is military calibration stock. Yes, that is not first cycle material. No, The room tightened. Even neighboring instructors had begun drifting subtly closer under the pretense of checking stations. Because academy culture recognized escalation the way predators recognize silence. Terran pointed at the rod. Cadet Vorek first. Vorek obeyed because refusing now would feel worse than failing. He gripped the rod with both hands, pulled, nothing, adjusted stance, pulled harder. A faint vibration, no bend, more force, visible strain now. The rod shifted barely enough for the monitor to acknowledge microscopic deviation. The sensor recorded it with reluctant yellow. Terran logged the number, then handed the same category rod to Mira. No one spoke, because now even breathing felt disruptive. Mira accepted it, tested the balance longer than before. The weight clearly mattered. She rotated the rod once, looked briefly at the center, then asked, "Does symmetry matter more than total bend?" Terran narrowed his eyes. Yes, she nodded, then lowered her shoulders in a way so subtle most recruits would have missed it if they had not already started studying every movement she made. And for the first time that morning, Terran understood something quietly important. The human had not yet used full force. She did not attack the alloy. That, more than anything, unsettled the room. Most recruits treated resistant material like an enemy. Force first, correction second, frustration immediately after. Mira, instead, held the military rod as though listening for something hidden inside it. One thumb moved lower, two fingers adjusted pressure, her elbows settled inward, then force entered the metal. The rod answered with a low metallic complaint. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. A sound military alloy was not supposed to make under bare biological handling. Several recruits leaned forward so abruptly that benches scraped behind them. Vorek took one step closer without permission. The alloy bent, slowly, controlled. A visible curve forming where moments earlier his full effort had barely registered measurable deviation. The sensor flashed yellow, then orange, then held. Mira released before the bend exceeded calibration tolerance and placed the rod back on the table with the same quiet precision as before. No triumph, no glance around the room, just completion. The sensor emitted a second tone, longer this time. Terran looked at the display, then looked again, then disconnected the sensor and connected it again because denial briefly felt like proper scientific procedure. The reading returned identical. Compression output had exceeded last cycle's instructor baseline. That detail remained on the screen like a personal insult. Vorek found his voice first. That alloy was compromised. Terran did not look away from the monitor. It was checked this morning. Then the sensor is wrong. The sensor has survived 3 academy directors and is still less dramatic than you. Even Terran heard the laughter this time. Short, controlled, but impossible to stop. Vorek's jaw tightened harder. "Again," he said louder now. "Same bar, same grip, no angle changes." He needed the second failure more than anyone else in the room. Terran did not object. He handed Vorek another military rod. Same density, same stock. Vorek planted harder, pulled harder. Shoulders rose, wrists locked early. The alloy moved slightly more than before, but still nowhere near Mira's result. Enough to pass. Not enough to recover dignity. He released it with visible frustration. Then Mira received the next rod. Again, she adjusted grip. Again, no wasted movement. Again, the metal bent cleaner than expected. By now, recruits from every nearby table had abandoned all pretense of working. The metallurgy wing had become one collective audience. The crystalline cadet near the rear finally raised a hand. "Instructor, are humans classified under reinforced grip species?" Terran answered without looking up. Apparently not accurately enough. Mira flexed her fingers once. No tremor, no soreness visible. Terran folded both arms again. "How often did you perform manual repairs?" "Depends on season." "Meaning?" "Harvest months more often." "Why harvest?" "Machines break when weather changes." The aquatic cadet whispered to nobody. "They train children accidentally." Vorek looked at her hands again, no longer mocking, now trying to solve them. That cannot be only strength. No, Mira said. You're forcing the center too early. He frowned. What does that mean? She pointed to the rod. You grip like you're trying to win immediately. That answer irritated him because it was both vague and obviously correct. Before he could reply, Terran opened the reserve drawer further. This time he removed the darker rod. Longer, thicker, military-grade structural stock used only for calibration demonstrations. The room changed instantly, because everyone there understood that bar. No first-cycle recruit touched command-grade material. Terran placed it on the compression block at the center platform. New test. Even nearby instructors had now entered openly through the side doors. Instructor Halev arrived first, saw the bar, then saw Mira standing beside bent military rods, and immediately abandoned whatever question he had intended to ask. Vorek stared. Instructor. That is command alloy. Yes, that is not classroom material. No, the compression block stood anchored directly into floor supports, unlike student tables. Used for industrial demonstrations, never casual handling. Terran pointed toward it. Cadet Holden. Mira stepped forward. For the first time, she looked at the alloy longer than usual, which made several recruits relax slightly. Normal resistance had returned. Then she placed both hands on it, and pressure began. Nothing happened immediately. 1 second, 2. Then the alloy emitted a sharp internal metallic note. The sensor line climbed. Yellow, orange. And then a sharp crack sounded beneath the block itself, not from the alloy, from the reinforced ceramic edge under it. One corner of the Academy compression platform fractured first, as if the table surrendered before the metal agreed to. Several recruits physically stepped back. Halev stared at the fracture. Vorek whispered, "No." The alloy bent, barely, but undeniably. Enough that the sensor flashed a warning threshold usually associated with assisted hydraulic load. Mira released immediately before the curve deepened. The command alloy held visible deviation. The block beneath it now showed a fracture line spreading from one corner. Nobody said anything for 2 full seconds, because military alloy had visibly yielded to bare human hands, and because several recruits suddenly understood why human cargo crews were never mocked twice in docking bays. Instructor Halev reached the compression block before anyone else moved. He crouched beside the fracture line, ran 2 fingers across the cracked ceramic edge, then looked up at Terran with an expression that had abandoned skepticism entirely. That block is reinforced for hydraulic demonstrations. Yes, Terran said. Halev checked the sensor feed himself, then checked again. How much? Terran rotated the monitor toward him. 4.2 deviation. Halev read it once. Then again. Hydraulic entry threshold is lower than that. I noticed. The room remained silent because instructors had now stopped sounding like instructors and started sounding like people who disliked their own data. Mira stepped back from the block and flexed her fingers once. Still no visible strain beyond faint redness across the palms. Vorek looked from the bent alloy to the cracked block and finally asked the question that had been growing inside half the room. Did you know that would happen? Mira glanced at the fracture line. No, you cracked the platform before the alloy. I was trying not to. That answer produced a short, involuntary laugh from the crystalline cadet near the rear. The aquatic recruit closed both eyes briefly. She keeps saying alarming things like apologies. Terran ignored both and opened the next compartment. Halev noticed immediately. No. Yes. You are escalating again? Yes. The platform is already damaged. That makes the morning memorable. From the compartment, he removed a black-coated alloy strip. Shorter, darker, layered structural composite used in hull reinforcement. Even Halev straightened fully now, because black coding meant restricted material, not classroom stock, not even standard instructor stock. Vorek stepped back instinctively. What is that? Terran placed it on the block. Layered hull composite. The crystalline cadet whispered. That one resists powered presses. Halev answered without looking away. Correct. Mira studied the strip. What changes? It punishes impatience, Terran said. That answer seemed to interest her more than the material itself. She placed both hands on it. Again, no rush. Again, that same tiny posture shift. Feet aligned, shoulders lowered, elbows angled for control rather than force. The strip resisted. The sensor line rose slowly. Nothing visible happened for the first second. Then a faint internal metallic tick emerged from inside the layered structure. The yellow line climbed, paused, then climbed again. Mira adjusted her right hand lower by less than a finger width. The strip bent. Tiny movement, but real. Enough that Halev leaned forward immediately. Impossible, Terran answered. It stopped being impossible 30 minutes ago. The strip moved farther, a measured deflection. Then Mira released before overcommitting. The strip retained visible deviation. The monitor completed the reading. Halev read first, 5.8. Terran nodded once. That number landed heavily, because everyone in the room now understood numbers enough to hear hierarchy in tone. 5.8 had crossed beyond recruit novelty. It had entered machine territory. Vorek stared openly now, no longer even pretending pride remained his primary concern. Your bones should not support that. Mira looked at him. They usually do. That answer explains nothing. No, she said calmly, but it is still true. Several recruits laughed again, partly because humor had become the only stable reaction left. Halev folded his arms. How often does Earth produce manual labor like this? Mira thought for a second. Depends where you live. Terran narrowed his eyes. Specific answer. Industrial zones more often. How many hours weekly? When younger? Hard to say, maybe 10. 10 hours of grip load. More if harvest machines broke. The aquatic cadet whispered again. They repair seasons with their hands. Vorek looked almost offended by the entire concept of Earth now. That cannot be considered normal. Mira looked at him briefly. Back home, nobody thinks this is impressive. That sentence changed the room more than the alloy had, because strength became unsettling only when normalized. Halev opened the thermal cabinet. He removed a cryogenic prepared alloy rod coated with frost. Dark surface. Cold vapor drifting lightly under the lab lights. Even Terran turned toward him. You are participating now? I dislike incomplete data. He placed the frozen rod on the block. This changes response entirely, Halev said. Too brittle? Too honest. Mira accepted insulated gloves without argument this time. Vorek raised one hand. Wait. Everyone looked at him. He lifted his tablet. If she bends cryogenic composite cleanly, record wrist angle. That changed the room again. Because the rival had crossed from resistance into study, Mira put on the gloves, touched the frozen rod. First attempt, nothing. Second attempt, slight tremor. Third adjustment, thumb lower, pressure slower. The rod bent, cleanly. No fracture, no micro crack alarm, perfect controlled deviation. Vorek lowered his tablet slowly. She does not fight the center first. No, Mira said, removing the gloves. Metal hates panic. And that line stayed in the room because somehow everyone immediately believed it. Then the upper academy alarm chimed once. Administrative incoming. Terran exhaled quietly because only one reason brought upper command that fast. Someone above had already heard the words human alloy and machine threshold in the same report, and Academy administration disliked hearing impossible things secondhand. The main doors opened. Senior Command Engineer Sailor entered with 2 officers, and the first thing he saw was a cracked compression block, bent black-coated alloy, and a human recruit standing calmly beside both. Senior Command Engineer Sailor stopped 3 steps inside the metallurgy wing and said nothing. That alone altered the atmosphere more than any shouted command could have, because officers at his level usually entered classrooms already annoyed, already prepared to restore order before asking what had happened. Sailor instead looked first at the cracked compression block, then at the black-coated strip, still bent on its surface, then at the cryogenic rod beside it, and only after confirming that none of it resembled rumor exaggeration did he look at Mira. What? He asked finally. Am I interrupting? Terran answered without hesitation. Material correction. Sailor looked at him once. That answer is too calm for the floor condition. Halev rotated the monitor toward him. Sailor read the stored values in silence. Military alloy deviation, black-coded composite, cryogenic clean bend, then the comparison line beneath them, machine threshold references. His expression changed only slightly, but enough that the two officers behind him immediately leaned closer. "Which recruit?" Sailor asked. Terran pointed, "Cadet Mira Halden." Sailor studied her. Academy grey uniform, sleeves rolled, no exosupport, no reinforced gloves, no visible enhancement, and hands that still looked too ordinary for the numbers currently on his screen. "Species?" "Human, sir," Mira said. "Yes," Sailor replied dryly. The room had already become suspicious. That earned restrained laughter, even from instructors. Sailor stepped to the block, lifted the black-coded strip, and checked the permanent deviation himself. Then he touched the cracked ceramic edge. Then he looked at Terran again. "This happened under direct force?" "Yes." "No leverage?" "No." "No powered assist?" "No." One officer behind him muttered, "That reading exceeds field press minimum." Sailor handed the strip back carefully, then looked at Mira again. "Home environment?" "Earth, sir." "Specific?" "Inland Freight District." That answer changed something in Sailor immediately. He understood enough Earth logistics language to react. "Inland freight?" he repeated. "Yes, sir." "Manual repair exposure?" "Since childhood." Halev folded his arms. "She calls it normal." Sailor nodded once. "That explains more than I enjoy." Vorek raised a cautious hand. "Sir, does Command know humans do this regularly?" Sailor turned toward him. "Command knows humans routinely describe physically unreasonable things as ordinary chores until someone checks the numbers." That line hit the recruits hard because it sounded like official frustration, which meant the pattern extended beyond this room. Sailor looked back at Mira. "Show me from the beginning." Terran handed her a fresh, hardened rod, then military grade again. This time Sailor watched not the alloy, but her wrists, her thumb timing, the pressure shift, the off-center entry, every detail. Flexible rod, clean bend. Military rod, superior symmetry. Again no wasted force. Again the same quiet sequence. Sailor narrowed his eyes. "She uses industrial sequencing," Terran noticed. "You recognize it?" "Yes." Sailor stepped closer. "Who taught you grip transition?" Mira looked slightly uncertain at the term. "My father corrected me when I bent freight brackets badly." "What exactly did he say?" She thought briefly. "He said metal listens better if you stop arguing with it." That line made Sailor exhale once through his teeth because it explained the sensor behavior better than half the Academy manuals. Vorek, now entirely past embarrassment, lifted his tablet again. "Say that again." Mira looked at him. "Metal listens better if you stop arguing with it." He recorded it. The crystalline cadet recorded it too. So did the aquatic recruit, because at some point the human had stopped being anomaly and become method. Sailor turned toward the reserve cabinet. "Bring the alloy braid." Halev blinked. "The layered braid?" "Yes. That sample is archive stock. Then archive can survive being educational." Terran opened the upper shelf and removed the narrow woven alloy braid. Dark silver layered memory structure designed for hull reinforcement under combat stress. Different from rods, different from strips, less brute resistance, more sequence sensitive. Sailor placed it on the compression block. "This one resists impatience," he said. Mira nodded immediately. Again, that interested look. She gripped the braid, pulled unevenly once, stopped, adjusted finger spacing, then applied pressure in sequence. Layer by layer, the braid yielded. Not all at once, a metallic ripple passing through structure until the entire weave bent cleanly. The sensor line climbed in stages, paused, climbed again. When she released, the braid held deviation beyond manual archive expectation. Vorek whispered before he meant to, "She is listening to it." No one corrected him, because visually that was exactly what it resembled. Sailor checked the reading, then looked at Mira. "How many humans in this academy?" "4, sir." The room went quiet again. because now everyone present understood they had only met one. "Any stronger than you?" Sailor asked. Mira hesitated. That hesitation mattered more than certainty. "Yes, sir." "How many?" "At least two." The aquatic cadet leaned back slowly. "Why do humans always answer dangerous things quietly?" The crystalline cadet replied, "Because apparently volume is unnecessary." Sailor almost smiled. Then his eyes moved toward the upper locked case. The last case, Terran noticed immediately. "No," Sailor answered without looking at him. "Yes, that sample is command archive. So are the numbers already on my screen." He opened the final case himself. Inside lay the narrow silver memory alloy core. No warning color, no dramatic markings. Just a deceptively simple piece of reinforcement material that everyone in the room respected for one reason. It remembered shape and resisted incomplete force. Sailor placed it on the block, and for the first time all morning, even Mira looked genuinely curious. The memory alloy core looked less intimidating than everything that had come before it. That was exactly why the room respected it. No black warning bands, no frost, no visible density cues. Just a narrow silver reinforcement piece resting on the cracked compression block like something ordinary enough to be underestimated once, and only once. Every instructor present knew what it was built for, not merely resisting force, recovering from it. Memory alloy reinforcement cores were used in combat hull sections where deformation had to absorb impact and then partially restore alignment before fracture spread could begin. Machines handled them reluctantly. Biological force usually failed before the alloy even acknowledged contact. Sailor rested 2 fingers beside it. "This one forgives weak pressure," he said, "and punishes incomplete pressure." Mira leaned slightly closer. "What counts as incomplete?" "Anything uncertain." That answer interested her immediately. She placed both hands on the core, paused, tested resistance, then frowned slightly, not from strain, but from recognizing that this alloy answered differently. "It pushes back unevenly." "Yes," Sailor said, "it remembers." "Can it forget?" The crystalline cadet almost laughed, but the room stayed quiet, because nobody wanted to interrupt whatever this had become. Sailor answered, "Only if you persuade it." Mira adjusted her fingers, lower, closer together, then force entered the alloy. At first the sensor rose slowly, yellow line climbing with frustrating patience. Nothing visible happened. 1 second, 2. Then the alloy emitted a thin metallic note, high, tight, resistant. The line shifted orange. Mira changed angle. A tiny adjustment, less center pressure, more sequence. The core moved a fraction, then immediately tried to return. Several recruits gasped because the metal visibly corrected itself under her hands. Mira stopped, studied it, and for the first time all morning smiled slightly. "Ah," she said softly, "it cheats." That line made Sailor's expression sharpen, because it was exactly how experienced engineers described memory alloy after first understanding it. She reset her grip, this time differently. Offset pressure first, then transition, then controlled force before the center stabilized. The core resisted again, recovered again. Then, on the 3rd sequence, the alloy bent farther than before. The sensor flashed red threshold. The memory core tried to return, but stopped halfway. Permanent deviation remained. Sailor stepped forward immediately and checked the number, then checked again. 7.1. Halev moved beside him. "No." "Yes, that exceeds archive manual entry." "It does." The officers behind Sailor were already recording without being told, because now this had become documentation, not classroom curiosity. Mira released the alloy carefully. The core slowly recovered partway, but not fully. A visible curve remained. Enough to confirm she had pushed past recovery preference. Sailor lifted it himself and watched the delayed partial correction, then looked at Mira. "How many years of engineering training before academy?" She blinked once. "I'm not engineering track, sir." Silence fell harder than any reaction so far. Even Vorek stopped breathing for a second. Sailor lowered the alloy slowly. "You are not engineering track." "No, sir." "What is your assigned path?" "Field logistics." That answer broke the room more effectively than any bent alloy had. The aquatic cadet laughed first, unable to stop himself. "Your logistics students bend hull material," Mira answered with complete calm. "Mostly, we move things nobody else wants to move." That line spread through the room like fresh damage, because now the scale had shifted again. If this was logistics, then Earth classified absurdity differently. Sailor handed the memory core to Terran. "Update Academy Division recommendation immediately." Terran understood at once. "Engineering dual track." "Yes," Halev added dryly, "and perhaps structural insurance." That finally produced open laughter. Even Mira smiled. Sailor turned toward Vorek. "You mocked hand size." Vorek straightened instantly. "Yes, sir." "What did you learn?" Vorek looked at Mira, then at the row of bent alloys now arranged across the table, like evidence against everything he had assumed since morning. Then he answered carefully. "That visible size does not predict useful force." Sailor nodded. "Better." Vorek added more honestly now. "And that humans describe dangerous things like chores." That earned another wave of laughter, because nobody present could deny it anymore. Sailor turned to the room. "Record this clearly. Strength often announces itself. Efficiency usually does not. Species survive longer when they stop mistaking unfamiliar proportions for weakness." Then he looked back at Mira. "One final question." "Yes, sir." "If Command assigned you heavy structural repair tomorrow, under fatigue, could you repeat today?" "Yes, sir." "Under stress?" "Yes." "After injury?" This time she hesitated slightly. "Depends which injury." Halev closed his eyes briefly. Sailor, however, almost smiled. "Excellent. Earth remains administratively exhausting." The recruits began dispersing slowly after that, but differently now. No one moved around Mira with amusement anymore. No one looked at her hands the same way. Vorek remained beside table 4 until most had left. Then he approached, holding one of the military rods. "Your father," he said awkwardly. "The freight worker." "Yes." "When he said metal listens better. If you stop arguing with it." "Yes." He looked at the rod, then at her. Was he always correct? Mira took the rod, adjusted 2 of his fingers lower, corrected his thumb placement and handed it back. Usually after shouting first. Vorek tried again. The alloy bent cleaner this time. He stared at the result, then asked the question everyone had delayed asking, because nobody was sure they wanted the answer. "Are all humans like this?" Mira looked at the bent rods, the cracked block, the memory core still slowly correcting shape on the instructor table, then answered without emphasis. "No." A short pause. "The ones with really dangerous hands usually work heavier jobs." The room went quiet one final time, because that sentence did more than end the lesson. It reopened the scale entirely. And for the first time that morning, even Sailor looked at the Academy records and silently wondered how much of Earth was still being filed under harmless descriptions simply because humans had written them themselves.